Mitch Keller is on the brink of some career milestones and some very rare happenings across Pirates history. On today's episode of Locked On Pirates, brought to you by Jase Medical.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Locked On Pirates podcast. My name is Ethan Smith, your host of the Locked On Pirates podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates, every single day. I hope you guys are having a wonderful Wednesday afternoon or Wednesday evening whenever you're listening to this show. And thank you so much for tuning in, as you always do. Last night's game wasn't fun. We'll talk about that in the second segment of today's show. But in the first segment of today's show, Mitch Keller is on the brink of breaking some career milestones for himself, and he has a chance to complete one of them tonight. The second one, physically impossible to complete. But Mitch Keller has had a stellar 2023 campaign for this Pittsburgh Pirates squad. He has been one of the biggest reasons why this team is even in the position that they are at 70-plus wins. He was a 2023 All-Star this year thanks to his really good first half that kind of started at the end of 2022. We all remember that he went to the bullpen in 2022. He got sent down last year and was trying to figure some things out. Now, Mitch Keller has fully taken over the role as the ace of this team. He has fully taken over the role as the best pitcher on this team for now. Obviously, Paul Skeens will have something to say about that at some point if his development track does fit what everybody is saying about him. But entering Wednesday night's game, so tonight's game against the Chicago Cubs in Game 2 of the series between the Pirates and Cubs, Mitch Keller has 198 strikeouts this year, just two shy of 200 on the season. Something that Mitch Keller has never even sniffed in his career, and something that hasn't happened for the Pittsburgh Pirates in quite a while. He reached his previous career high in strikeouts last season. He had 138, and excluding the 2020 COVID season, Keller's strikeout numbers have increased every single year that he's been in the league, while his opposing batting average, whip, and innings have all followed the same path with him. Right now, everything is going up or down in the right directions in his fourth year of Major League work. And Keller is also nearing the 200-200 club for pitchers, a milestone that every single pitcher in Major League Baseball wants to achieve because it's a very important milestone for these guys. And he's sitting at 182 2/3 innings pitched, meaning he needs about 17 1/3 innings to reach 200 innings on the season. And that one may be a little bit harder. We've heard Mitch Keller be very, very vocal about the fatigue that he's dealt with this year. We've heard him be vocal about this being his longest season that he's ever pitched. And obviously, in quantity and quality have been the best parts of his career this season. But realistically, he'll probably get about 3 more starts, including tonight. So you have tonight's game and then 2 more starts to follow that. So he'd have to pitch about 5 2/3 innings per start to reach that milestone. If he pitches 6 innings to start, he'll reach that milestone easily, getting over to 18 innings pitched. But about 5 2/3 would get him close, depending on how those 5 2/3 average out. It's something that's very plausible for Mitch Keller to do down the stretch of the season, and it's something that Mitch Keller has put on his list that he wants to complete this year. He's wanted to do this his entire MLB career. It's something that pitchers across all of Major League Baseball all want to do, and he can very well do it. The strikeouts, I think he'll definitely get tonight. It would shock me if Mitch Keller doesn't get more than 2 strikeouts in this game tonight against the Chicago Cubs, but crazier things have happened at Wrigley Field for the Pittsburgh Pirates this year. But Keller obviously had a much better first half than second half this season. And again, as I've mentioned, this is the most innings that Mitch Keller has ever pitched in his major league career, even going back to the minor leagues. I mean, this is the most work that he's ever had in his professional baseball career. And he spoke to Kevin Gorman of Trib Live about consistency over an entire season, something that he really wants to take into 2024. And this was Keller saying, I want to make 32 starts in the regular season, then hopefully whatever it is after that, hopefully 4 more or whatever it may be. I'm using this time in September to figure out what I need to do to be the best I can next year, which is what you want to hear as a Pirates fan, because with the pitching staff the way it looks, even with outside acquisitions outside of the organization in the offseason, Mitch Keller is still your guy. And Mitch Keller is still the guy that you need to be your number one guy in this pitching staff going into the 2024 season to get off to a hot start like he did this year, and ultimately get the Pirates off to a hot start like they did this year when they started 20-8. Now, for Keller, we all know he's going to be an integral part of the Pirates contention window, which we all, I think it's at least expect to at least get a hint of it next season, but it could very well start next season if all the right buttons are pushed in the offseason and the Pirates get everything they need to get to fix some holes in this roster. And finding out how to be his best throughout an entire season while getting 30-plus starts, which is kind of an expectation now for Mitch Keller, is going to be a huge factor into his play moving forward. Because, yes, pitchers get fatigued pitching this often, this many times over an entire season. Spencer Strider has dealt with it. You're looking at Garrett Cole, who's also dealt with it. He dealt with it in a Pirates uniform. Even more simply, Francisco Liriano. We'll talk about them in a minute, too. But one of the things heading into this offseason that I would like the Pirates to at least attempt is to get an extension done with Mitch Keller. I wanted it to get done prior to this year because I thought it would be at a cheaper volume. I thought they could lock him up for a longer period of time. But now Mitch Keller, that extension is going to look a little more expensive than what you would probably like it to be as a Pittsburgh Pirates fan. Not saying he hasn't deserved it in any right. His second half has not been the greatest, but his overall framework this year has proven to Pirates faithful, the coaching staff, and upper management that he is going to be the guy in the pitching staff for quite a while. And he's under team control until after 2025. Of course, this 2024 offseason will be an arbitration offseason, and the 2025 offseason would be a arbitration offseason. And then after that is when he would be an unrestricted free agent. And we've seen the Pittsburgh Pirates buy out arbitration years very recently. They did it with Brian Reynolds over the offseason. And then, of course, they worked out the extension to get him signed to the largest contract in Pittsburgh Pirates history. And I think that's something they could do with Mitch Keller as well. Buy out his arbitration years and then get the extension talks rolling. And I think that could help progress Keller extension talks as well, because if you also lock up Mitch Keller, you could have a nasty 1-2 punch of Mitch Keller and Paul Skeens moving forward for the next at least half decade, barring injury and all sorts of other things that can happen to pitchers. And that's thinking very positively about Mitch Keller moving forward, and as well as Paul Skeens, because we still have not seen Paul Skeens pitch in major league pitch yet. We have seen him pitch professionally in a very small sample size. We'll obviously see a lot more of Paul Skeens next year, potentially at the big league level if his progression does work out. But as Gary hinted on Monday, and as I've hinted on this show, you don't want Paul Skeens to have to come up and be the guy right away. You want him to have to beat somebody out with his play at the minor league level. And Keller joining the 200-200 club, again, that being 200 strikeouts and 200 innings, is no small feat in Pittsburgh, because we haven't seen it done since Garrett Cole and Francisco Liriano both pitched 200 strikeouts in Pittsburgh in 2015. Of course, Cole was a part of the 200-200 club that year, but Liriano only had 186 innings, so he was not a part of that. And prior to that 2015 season for Garrett Cole in the 200-200 club, the last time we saw a Pirates pitcher pitch 200 innings and have 200 strikeouts in a season was a long time, because Oliver Perez in 2004 had 239 strikeouts, but he only threw 196 innings. So Keller has the chance to do something very rare in the modern Pirates era, because if you go back to the late 1800s, early 1900s, yeah, this happened a lot because pitchers were pitching all the time, every single game. So now it's not as common. But Mitch Keller, man, he has the chance to do something very rare. He has the chance to do something that I think is going to be monumental for his development if he can get to that 200 mark, and he has a real chance to do it. And I will be watching to make sure he does, because I think he can get to that point. The Pirates' struggles versus the Cubs continued on Tuesday night, and it was a game to forget, but we're going to talk about that game and how the Pirates could potentially bounce back to avoid something that hasn't happened for over 120 years. But before we get into that, today's episode is brought to you by the wonderful people over at Sleeper. You can get up to a $100 match on your first deposit on mobile only at sleeper.com/promo code/lockedon, because the MLB playoffs are right around the corner and NFL football is here, which means the clock is ticking on your chance to win 100 times your cash on daily fantasy baseball and, of course, football. Baseball has never been more exciting than it is now, with studs like Ronald Acuna, Mookie Betts, and others. Pick more or less on stats for these stars like home runs, hits, strikeouts. If you think Mitch Keller can get over that total on strikeouts to get to 200 tonight, you might want to do it, folks. And more for up to a 100 times payout on Sleeper. Get your picks right, and you could win big. Use promo code LOCKEDON, and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details, and enjoy the Sleeper app. The Pittsburgh Pirates played a forgettable game against the Chicago Cubs on Tuesday night, and that's something that you could probably just clip me saying over the last couple of seconds, and realistically, you're going to be right about it. It's been a struggle for the Pittsburgh Pirates this year against the Chicago Cubs, to say the least, and last night, again, was just another forgettable game against this Cubs team that the Pirates just have not been able to figure out all but once this year, which we'll get into in a little bit. And as we've seen all season, the Cubs opened up an early lead as Dansby Swanson hit a 2-run homer that went over Jack Sawinski's glove. Thanks to the Wrigley basket, by the way. I mentioned to myself when I saw that happen, that if that happened without the Wrigley basket, that was probably a double. But, hey, you can't control how other ballparks are made and outfitted. And things didn't get much better from there after Bailey Falter was relieved for Quinn Priester after 1 inning, which I found very interesting because Bailey Falter has usually at least went 2, maybe even 3 innings. And Quinn Priester, of course, a Chicago native, pitching in his native Chicago, allowed 4 earned runs over 6 innings of work while recording 2 strikeouts. And it wasn't the best Quinn Priester, and it wasn't the best outing at all, but it's an improvement from what we've seen from him, because Quinn Priester has had a nightmare rookie season, sitting right now at an 8.61 ERA, which actually came down after that start last night. But he's just not really figured it out in his first professional or in his first MLB season, and it's something that the Pirates are going to have to monitor going into next year. Is Quinn Priester a part of our future plans? He is still very young. I will say that. He still has time to grow, and as I always say, look at Mitch Keller. It took him until he was 26, 27 years old to finally figure it out, and he does finally figure it out in this age 27 season, as we talked about in the first segment. Kyle Nicholas, by the way, made his MLB debut last night and got a harsh welcoming to the big leagues, to say the least. Nicholas recorded just 1 out in the game and allowed 6 earned runs. It was not pretty, including an Alexander Canario grand slam to completely close out the game that made it 10-1. And Nicholas, again, I think he's going to be a future piece of this team. I really like what Kyle Nicholas has done. And realistically, he is the make or break of the Jacob Stallings deal from the Miami Marlins almost at this point. And we'll see what he has to offer down the rest of the season in his cameo with the Pittsburgh Pirates. But last night was not a good start for him whatsoever. The Pirates' lone run came from the guy who seems like he's just scoring at will lately, and Ke'Bryan Hayes, who had a solo shot. It was the only run of the game in the 14-1 loss. And speaking of 14, it was his 14th of the season and his 6th home run in his last 30 games, meaning Ke'Bryan Hayes is averaging a home run every 5 games right now in his past 30 games, which is just a revelation for him, man. I talked about it yesterday, about him winning his first Gold Glove potentially this year, and just the improvements that he's seen hitting the baseball as of late. And if he can continue to hit the baseball like this, folks, it is going to be something for this team if Ke'Bryan Hayes can be a consistent offensive force while also being a Gold Glove caliber third baseman year in and year out. The loss, by the way, was the 10th of the season for the Pirates against the Chicago Cubs. And in my young life, I have seen this Cubs team dominate the Pittsburgh Pirates, and mostly the Cubs have dominated the Pirates across their history. And this was the 8th time the Pittsburgh Pirates have lost 10-plus games to the Cubs since 2015. The 8th time. That may be since 2013, but I'll say 2015. But either way, it's not good. They've had double-digit losses against this Cubs team way too many times in recent memory, and it's something they're going to have to overcome, which they did overcome it in 2014, which was the last time that Pittsburgh had a winning record against the Cubs when they went 14-5 against them. We all remember 2014 leading the Pirates to the NL wildcard for the second straight year, and Madison Bumgarner just shutting everything down. And Pittsburgh has only been held to 1 victory in a season versus the Chicago Cubs. Again, 1 time this has happened in the entire history that the Pirates and Cubs have played each other in Major League Baseball. The Pirates are 1-10 right now. The last time and only time the Pirates finished a season against the Chicago Cubs with only 1 victory, and they only have 2 more chances to do it. They have tonight with Mitch Keller and tomorrow with Johan Oviedo, was 1896, when the Pirates went 1-11 against the Chicago Cubs. It has been 129 years since the Pirates only won 1 game against the Chicago Cubs in a singular year. And it could very well happen in these next 2 games with just the way history has gone this year. Now, obviously, Mitch Keller is facing Justin Steele tonight. Justin Steele, by the way, has a 3.80 ERA against the Pittsburgh Pirates and 25 strikeouts in 5 appearances. Keller, of course, will pitch tonight, as I mentioned in the first segment, eyeing history. Well, milestones, I wouldn't say history. And he holds the only victory for the Pirates over the Cubs in 2023. Remember, that was back on August 25th. That was a Friday night game in Pittsburgh when he pitched 8 shutout innings. Looked very, very good in that outing. And it's the only time the Pirates have beat the Cubs all season. Meanwhile, Chicago winning last night helped them maintain the final wildcard spot in the NL wildcard. The Marlins leapfrogged the Reds to be a half game behind Chicago. And, of course, the Reds are now a full game behind Chicago. The Pirates, of course, will be playing the Cincinnati Reds over the weekend. But we'll see how this game goes tonight. We'll talk about it on tomorrow's show. So be looking out for that. Also be highlighting if Mitch Keller does hit that 200 strikeout milestone and gets closer to 200 innings. But we'll see what happens. It's been a wild, wild season against the Chicago Cubs, and we'll see if the Pirates and Mitch Keller can repeat what they did on August 25th against the Cubbies at Wrigley Field tonight. Today's episode is brought to you by Jase Medical. Use the promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off today at jasemedical.com, because the Jase case provides 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use. All it takes to get a Jase case is to fill out a simple online form and in some cases jump on a quick call with one of our on-board certified physicians. Get ongoing care from our physicians on any treatment-related questions because it's doctor recommended and doctor created. By the way, everyone should be empowered to care for themselves and their loved ones during the unexpected. And that's why Jace Medical offers the Jase case. The Jase case, again, provides 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use and gives you a peace of mind so that you are not just hoping that you have access to medication in an emergency. Jace Medical makes sure you have the medication on hand. It's simple, and they handle everything from the online evaluation to licensed pharmacy medication delivery and ongoing consultation and care. Don't get caught unprepared. Save more than $360 by getting these life-saving antibiotics with Jase Medical, plus an additional $20 off by using code LOCKEDON at checkout on jasemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com with the promo code LOCKEDON to be empowered to take care of yourself in a medical emergency today. Termarr Johnson, the Pirates 2022 number 4 overall pick in the MLB draft, is wrapping up, or has wrapped up, his first complete professional season in the Pirates organization. Of course, made some pretty good plays in his first year, but this, of course, being his first complete professional season. And Termarr Johnson, folks, I love the draft pick whenever they made it. I still love the draft pick now. And Termarr Johnson was the kind of outlier to what we've seen out of Ben Cherington thus far through his through the draft process, especially in the first round, because we remember in 2021, he selects Henry Davis number 1 overall, a college player out of Louisville. Of course, we've seen Henry Davis do some decent things at the MLB level this year, making headway at the professional level and the MLB level. He then goes with Termarr Johnson, though, who was a prep bat, second baseman as well, which is very rare to see a prep second baseman go that high in the draft. But Termarr Johnson just had the hit tool that Ben Cherington liked. And then, of course, we saw him go with the college pitcher Paul Skeens this year. So of the 3 first-round picks, Johnson's the only high school guy that went in the first round for the Pittsburgh Pirates, and he's impressed in his short time in Pittsburgh and in his short career. He did play in 2022, only saw 63 at-bats in his debut campaign, but 2023, as mentioned, became his first full professional season, which saw a promotion from Bradenton to Greensboro, a stretch of 4 home runs in 5 games, and many learning opportunities for Termarr Johnson, including, among the accolades that he picked up this year, a Florida League All-Star nod. He was the only player from the Bradenton Marauders to get an All-Star nod in the Florida All-Star League, or the Florida League as an All-Star. And for Johnson, I mean, the stats may not jump off the page, but let's also remember here, folks, that he's only 19 years old and realistically could make his MLB debut at the age of 21 or 20, depending on when his birthday is. I've never looked up his birthday, but he realistically could make his MLB debut at a very young age, and that's what the expectation should be via MLB prospects. His ETA is 2025. And between his time in Bradenton and Greensboro, he slashed 244 on the average number, a 422 on base percentage, a 438 slugging, and an 860 OPS. He also had 18 home runs, 59 RBIs, and these next 2 stats, of course, will speak to his on base percentage. But he had 101 walks and 120 strikeouts, a very, very, very good walk to strikeout ratio for a hitter. You guys know I love that statistic so much because that means that he's seeing the ball very well. He's hitting the ball when he needs to, and he's walking at will, not swinging at things often outside of the zone, and using his hit tool that he has. And again, those stats are nothing that you scream off the page and say, oh my God, Termarr Johnson's a revolutionary, generational talent. No. But he's still 19, and this was his first professional season in baseball. So he's only going to get better. And for Johnson, as I've mentioned, he's still pretty far away from his MLB debut. 2025 is a realistic timetable for it, but I would say later in 2025, maybe even the beginning of 2026 is when we'll expect Termarr Johnson to officially be up here and making an impact at second base. But he is the Pirates' second-ranked prospect behind Paul Skeens. It was the number one prospect before the Pirates selected Paul Skeens, and he was added to the MLB prospects pipeline rankings. So he's going to have a spotlight on him the entire time that he's playing in the minor leagues, and then eventually when he does make his debut at the MLB level. And if you've seen anything about Termarr Johnson, you also know that he is going to continue to hit the baseball. That's just what Termarr Johnson does. He's going to be that kind of player. He has a 60 hit grade. He's going to likely stay at second base moving forward. There were talks that he could potentially go to shortstop, but I just think O'Neal Cruz is going to be the shortstop of the future. I have faith in him to learn how to play the position defensively day in and day out. And even if they don't, I just still think Termarr Johnson is just a better player defensively at second base. But ultimately, it's all going to come down to his hitting and how good of a hitter at the plate that Termarr Johnson can be. And it's going to possibly make him a long-term option at the position that, as I mentioned on the show last week, is a position that a lot of guys are fighting for right now. Nick Gonzalez, who hit for the cycle last night with the Indianapolis Indians. You look at Leo Piguero, Alika Williams, Jared Triolo, Tucapita Marcano will be definitely fighting for that position out of spring. You look at all of these different factors, but Termarr Johnson, whenever he's eventually ready to come up here, he's going to be added to that mold as well, folks. And no doubt in anything for me that he is going to continue to do well. I'm going to be following his minor league career as well, and I expect him to make a leap to Altoona in 2024. I think that's very, very possible. He may even get some looks in Indianapolis later in the year. But at the end of the day, again, he's still very far away. He's a kid that we should all have our eye on moving forward, and he's a top prospect for a reason, and that's not going to change. Guys, thank you so much for tuning into the Locked On Pirates podcast, as you always do here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates, every single day. My name is Ethan Smith. You can follow me on Twitter at MVP_Ethan or at Locked On Pirates for all of your news, analysis, opinions, and more about the Pittsburgh Pirates down the final couple weeks of the 2023 season and a fun off-season slate. So, guys, thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday, and I will see you tomorrow on the flip side.